This is the shocking family story of a 24-year-old American woman who explores a remote region of the country called Samoa, becomes isolated there, ends up living with 22 indigenous men, and becomes pregnant in the process. Before watching the video, please subscribe and like. It's a great help to us. At 24, Jennifer Jenny Miller, an American woman, was a free spirit who had enjoyed various activities like cross-country road trips and overseas backpacking trips since she was young. Although she seemed to be working a normal office job after graduating from university, a corner of her heart still burned with a passionate desire to simply pick up and leave for somewhere new. Then one day, she became captivated by a small country called Samoa, which she learned about through YouTube. It wasn't a famous tourist destination like Hawaii, Fiji, or Tahiti, but this nation of small islands was said to still hold on to its traditions, with untouched nature unfolding beautifully. Without hesitation, she took a leave of absence from work, dipped into her savings, and bought a plane ticket. Her family and friends worried, saying, "There's really no information about that place, it could be dangerous if things go wrong," but their concerns weren't enough to quell her curious heart. "While I'm still young, I want to experience things fully in the places I want to go," she thought. And so, with a pounding heart, she boarded the plane to Samoa. The moment she set foot in this island nation located in the middle of the Pacific, a relatively lesser-known part of Oceania, she was greeted by the exotic air, the blue sky, and the refreshingly vast ocean. It felt much quieter, more delicate, and purer than famous tourist spots like Honolulu or Guam. With no major specific goal other than to wander freely for a month and interact with the locals, her heart settled in, completely unaware at the time of how dramatically everything would change. For the first few days, she enjoyed hotel life near the capital, Apia, exploring nearby famous tourist sites and the city scenery. The warm, innocent smiles of the Samoan people and the soft rhythm of the local language, Samoan, heard everywhere, captured her heart. Walking along the beach with the cool breeze, she felt an overwhelming sense that she could be endlessly peaceful here. However, her curiosity soon spurred her towards another adventure. To meet the real Samoa, I need to go deeper, she thought. Hearing advice to join a tour exploring remote villages or make local friends and travel to smaller islands, she unhesitatingly planned to charter a small fishing boat. She had coincidentally heard from a restaurant owner about a traditional island inhabited by many indigenous people and felt an irresistible urge to go there. But just then, the weather turned ominous. Despite weather forecasts warning of a strongly forming tropical depression, her adventurous spirit couldn't be stopped. Even the local friend piloting the boat advised, "It might be a bit dangerous now, let's postpone until tomorrow," but a strange conviction, "It feels like today is the only chance," pushed her to insist on setting sail. About an hour after the small fishing boat set off, cutting through the cobalt blue sea, thunder suddenly roared, and a torrential downpour engulfed them. The boat tossed violently on the fierce waves, and for Jenny, unfamiliar with the Samoan sea's topography, the storm was like something out of a horror movie. Unfortunately, the boat struck a large reef, losing propulsion in the impact, leading to a shipwreck situation. On the verge of sinking, the boat was miraculously pushed towards the shore of a nearby deserted island. Her local friend also desperately swam towards land, but they got separated in the chaos, and contact was lost. When she regained consciousness, Jenny Miller found herself collapsed on a sandy beach. The boat was wrecked, and she could see a few men swimming ashore nearby, but the situation was utter chaos. The island she had arrived on was an extremely remote place, barely known even on the main island of Samoa, named Tupuai. It was known that even residents of nearby islands rarely visited, and it was rumored to house a traditional indigenous village that maintained minimal contact with outside civilization. The moment Jenny opened her eyes, she saw about 20 sturdy young men and elders, along with a few women, standing around her as if guarding her. Fear initially gripped her, but as they approached with concerned eyes, she felt a sense of relief rather than alarm. "People live here," she thought thankfully, pulling herself together. Some of the locals asked in broken English if she was okay and if she was hurt. This village was smaller than expected and seemed almost untouched by modern civilization. In the center, a few traditional houses, fails, were clustered together, surrounded by lush tropical forests bordering the coastline. She didn't know the exact population, but was told it was roughly around 30 people in total. Most of them were young men. The reason given was that many born on the island leave for cities or other islands as they grow up, and those remaining were the ones who had decided to stay and protect the village. Her guide became a young man named Olii, who could speak a mix of Samoan and some English. He urgently led her, shivering in the rain, to a small hut, telling her to warm up and take shelter. All she could manage was "thank you." Glancing around, she noticed there seemed to be well over 20 young men in the village alone. "What do I do now? My phone and most of my belongings must have sunk into the sea," she thought. Tears welled up in her despair, but she considered herself lucky just to be alive. After a few days, she realized how simple and warm the villagers were. They checked if she was hurt, provided blankets, food, and even clothes. Western food like bread or processed snacks was hard to come by, but coconuts, taro, and tropical fruits were abundant. Their diet consisted mainly of grilled fish and food cooked wrapped in banana leaves using traditional methods. Fortunately, her local friend who had been shipwrecked with her was rescued a few days later on another part of the coast and was also staying on the island. He could communicate somewhat with the villagers, effectively acting as a bridge between them. However, with the weather remaining poor and no boat available to travel between islands, escape seemed impossible for the time being. Meanwhile, she found it curious that in this situation, there were only 6 women in the village, while the remaining 22 were men. Most of the women were elderly grandmothers or already married with several children. This meant there were practically no young, marriageable women on the island. Perhaps because of this, the young men looked at Jenny with curious eyes. Initially, they kept their distance so as not to make her uncomfortable, but as time passed, they gradually approached, asking her to share stories about her travels or what cities in the U.S. were like. Though wary at first, they were generally friendly, even making her a chair out of branches if needed and bringing her drinking water or fruits that could be used as fuel. When they were together, they would perform traditional dances or sit around under the night sky, sharing legends passed down from their ancestors. Although the language was unfamiliar, a sense of warmth and comfort was conveyed through their expressions and gestures. However, this peace was short-lived. The village had a long-standing tradition. Outsiders who arrived were considered guests and had to abide by the community's rules for a certain period. Especially since the island's resources were limited and had to be shared, newcomers were expected to contribute through labor. After recovering somewhat, Jenny began helping the village youth cultivate fields or catch fish. It was tough at first, but realizing this was a matter of survival, she did her best. Fortunately, she was physically fit and had decent coordination, quickly becoming a capable helper. Through sweating together, she grew closer to the people. Among the men, one stood out, Toa Patio, often called Toa. A tall man around 25 with a sculpted physique, the villagers seemed to place their hopes in him as a kind of leader. His father had been the island's chief but had recently passed away from illness. Since then, Toa had naturally taken on the role of the young chief. When Jenny first met Toa, she was struck by his serious demeanor. Unlike other young men his age who focused on her with curious eyes, he stood back, observing and showing consideration. When she got lost in the forest, he came to find her himself. At mealtimes, he sat beside her, explaining things so she wouldn't feel awkward. As time went by, anxiety, "what if I can never leave this place," mixed with a curious sense of stability, "maybe life in a primitive place like this isn't so bad," grew within her. The islanders were simple but connected by strong bonds, and the untouched beauty of nature was dazzling. There were no modern conveniences, but walking the beach every morning, listening to birdsong, and chatting with people under a sky overflowing with stars in the evening made Jenny feel truly alive. Meanwhile, her feelings for Toa began to change. Initially just a grateful local, he always silently protected her, whether sitting by the bonfire to ward off the cold or gathering fruit in the dangerous forest. One night, when another fierce storm hit the island, she went outside and was nearly swept away by a gust of wind. Toa desperately rushed over, grabbed her, and steadied her stumbling steps. As he held her hand and they miraculously escaped the wind back to the hut, Jenny's heart pounded fiercely. Was this more than just gratitude? That night, Jenny couldn't sleep, reflecting on herself like someone lost on an unfamiliar path. A few days later, a big festival was held in the village. It was an annual tradition where the islanders prayed to the sky and sea for abundance, dancing and singing all night long. Held on the beach adorned with colorful flowers and caressed by a cool breeze, the festival was as passionate as any glamorous city event. The day before, Jenny joined the women, donning a traditional skirt, the lava, and wearing a necklace woven from palm leaves. She tucked a red hibiscus flower into her hair. Despite being an outsider, the women treated her like an old friend, delighting in telling her, "This is the traditional Samoan style. It suits you very well." As night fell, people gathered around a large bonfire. Drums and traditional percussion instruments sounded, and the dancing began. Young men moved their bodies to the intense rhythm, while women responded with elegant yet rhythmic dance moves. Then, Toa approached and extended his hand to Jenny. No words were spoken, but it felt as though their hearts connected strangely. Perhaps that's why? As they danced side by side near the bonfire, their eyes met in a heart-fluttering gaze. The surrounding people, seemingly having noticed, erupted in cheers, half teasing, half congratulatory. Blushing furiously, she asked herself, "What is this feeling? I'm just a traveler here, unsure when I'll ever return," but her heart had already taken steps towards Toa. After the festival, Toa suggested showing her various places around the island. Still unfamiliar with the coastal terrain and mountain paths, she was intrigued. They set off early in the morning, exploring every corner of the island. They climbed coastal cliffs to gaze at the majestic sea and reached a waterfall deep in the forest, dipping their feet together in the cool water. The day spent sweating, laughing, and walking together felt as comfortable as being with an old friend and as thrilling as being with a lover. Toa seemed stoic, but his occasional smiles were incredibly warm. As the intense midday sun began to set, the two sat on the beach watching the sunset, and a natural embrace occurred between them. But simultaneously, practical worries crossed Jenny's mind. Eventually, contact will be made with the main island or the outside world for rescue, and then I'll have to go back, right? I have my life back in the States. This concern weighed heavily on her heart. Was it right to jump into love when they barely knew each other's countries or cultures? Some villagers, especially the elders, watched with concern, worrying that forming deep affection with an outsider might not align with the village's traditions. However, the island's youth watched the pair with excited eyes. If Jenny becomes Toa's partner, maybe it could bring a new wind to the village? Such hopeful whispers were cautiously exchanged. Finally, one day, a small boat from a nearby island arrived at Tupuai seeking fuel and supplies. They were shop owners who occasionally communicated with Apia. They mentioned that storm damage had been severe, preventing timely supply delivery, which is why they had come directly. This sparked hope in Jenny that she could communicate with the outside world, report her stranded status, and request rescue. However, the boat couldn't stay long, managing only a brief exchange before having to leave again. They reported that the situation was more complicated than expected, and due to poor sailing conditions from the storm, arranging a large-scale rescue immediately was difficult. They could only say that another boat might possibly come in a few more weeks. Her local friend, also stranded, agreed they should wait a bit longer, as immediate travel was difficult due to the weather. That day brought an unexpected shock. One of the village youths who went into the forest to gather food was bitten by a poisonous snake and became critically ill. With no village doctor or clinic, they had to rely on folk remedies, but time was running out, and his life was in danger. "Jenny, don't you know about fever reducers or painkillers? American medicine would be helpful," the villagers pleaded desperately, but the medical supplies she carried had been lost in the storm or were gone. A desperate Toa tried to extract the venom himself but lacked sufficient knowledge. In the dire situation, Jenny remembered a small pouch she had kept for emergencies. Inside, she found a small amount of antibiotics, pain relievers, and other simple items she carried. Mixing these with traditional herbs the villagers used, she did her best. Thankfully, the timely emergency treatment saved the young man, who slowly regained his strength. This incident shook the entire village. "Thank you so much. Without you, Toya might have died." Having overcome this life-or-death crisis together, the outsider Jenny Miller became less of a mere guest and more like family. Toa's gaze towards her grew fonder, and Jenny's feelings mirrored his. Then, on a destined night, unable to sleep due to the tropical heat, Jenny went outside for the cool sea breeze. Toa, standing on the beach under the moonlight, saw her and approached. The gentle moonlight reflecting on the sea and the sound of waves drew them into an emotional world. They looked at each other and carefully confessed their feelings. "You came from a different place, but it feels like you've become a part of us now. Even if you return someday, the feeling that I want to be with you keeps growing stronger," Toa said. In response, Jenny honestly shared her own feelings. "Honestly, I'm conflicted too. I've grown to love life here, and I like you very much too. But I have a life I need to return to in the States." Tears welled in their eyes at that moment, and emotions exploded as they embraced. Under the moonlight, their hearts overflowed with the warmth they felt from each other. It felt like an intense attraction, as if they were the first humans meeting, yet eternally unwilling to lose each other. This single embrace seemed to say everything, even without revealing all their thoughts. After a long conversation that night, they carefully shared their hearts in a beach hut on the edge of the village. It wasn't lust, but a moment like a blessing, mixed with fear, trembling, and deep love. A pure desire to protect this person enveloped her whole being, along with instinctual, earnest emotions she hadn't felt back home. She didn't yet know that this event would become the clue determining her future destiny. Weeks passed, and the promised rescue signal from the outside world never came. The weather grew more erratic, and the village bustled with its self-sufficient life. During this time, Jenny started feeling frequently lethargic and dizzy. At first, she attributed it to the heat and unfamiliar food, but the nausea and morning sickness worsened. A thought occurred to her: the portable pregnancy test kit she had packed unknowingly. She had originally packed it for another purpose but had tucked it deep in her bag for emergencies during her travels. After rummaging through the bottom of her pouch, she found it, secretly took the test, and confirmed the result: positive. Pregnant. No way. Here? It was unbelievable, but undeniably true. Shock, joy, and fear washed over her all at once. When she told Toa, he reacted with disbelief, followed by immense emotion and excitement. "This is a blessing from the heavens. We're having a baby. I don't know what to do, but I'm so happy." Toa held her hand tightly, his eyes clearer than the moonlight. But Jenny was simultaneously plunged into worry. "If the rescue team comes now, I'll have to return to the US. But I'm already pregnant. How will my parents, my friends react? Should I live here permanently? Is it possible to give birth without modern medical facilities?" All sorts of questions swirled in her head. When the news spread through the village, most people reacted with surprise and joy. For an island that hadn't seen many births among the younger generation for a long time, the arrival of new life was considered a village-wide celebration. The elders especially rejoiced, proclaiming it a blessing from heaven that a child would soon be born to carry on their lineage. Of course, there were concerns. How will she give birth? There are no medical professionals on this island. However, there was an elderly woman who had learned midwifery on another island, and she confidently stated she could care for the mother using traditional methods. Furthermore, a consensus formed: if Jenny wished, they would all work together to make things safer for her. Toa, feeling an increased sense of responsibility to protect her, worked even harder on various tasks for the village. Whenever she expressed sudden anxiety, he would hold her hand and reassure her: "If you really have to go back home, then I'll go with you, or at least, I'll protect you somehow until the baby is safe." Just as she was settling more deeply into the island, a small boat finally arrived from the outside. This time, the weather had calmed, and a small group, somewhat like a rescue team, had arrived from Apia. They had received word via a small radio that an American castaway was on this island. Jenny's local friend ran up, teary-eyed, exclaiming, "We can finally go back." However, the fact that she could actually leave presented Jenny with both joyous news and an even greater conflict. Should she really leave or stay here? The boat was scheduled to depart soon, and if she missed this chance, there was no telling when another rescue or transportation would come. The expressions on the islanders' faces, especially Toa's, were complex. "You should do what you want. I can't force you to stay. But if you leave, what will happen to you and the child?" This choice was cruel for him too. Toa suggested she return to the city, give birth safely, and then come back here if she wanted. Other residents also suggested she go give birth in a modern hospital and then return. The time for decision arrived. She walked heavily along the beach, looking at the small boat, retracing all her memories. But louder than the thoughts in her head was her burning heart. What life do I truly want? What do I want to pass on to my child? I've already found new connections, a new family here, and they've given me everything. Finally, just before the boat departed, she put down her bag. "I'm staying here." At those words, tears formed in Toa's eyes, while the rescue team and her local friend were stunned. But her voice didn't tremble. "If I go back to the States, I'll miss my parents and friends, but at the same time, I feel I need to be with my child's father right now. I'll live wisely so I don't regret this decision." The rescue team was perplexed but ultimately respected her wishes and left, promising to send another boat to check in when the situation stabilized. With that, Jenny went to the village common ground where everyone was gathered and declared, "I've decided to live here with all of you." The villagers cheered, and many elders and young people danced with joy, blessing her and Toa. From that day on, Jenny became more proactive in living as a true member of the village. She worked alongside the young men, tilling fields, gathering shellfish on the beach, and learning how to efficiently use the island's resources. She learned from the grandmothers how to make traditional clothing and prepare various necessities for childbirth. As her pregnancy progressed into the middle stages and her body grew heavier, she felt strangely stable. Perhaps thanks to the clean air and nutritious natural food, and engaging in lighter tasks rather than heavy physical labor, her condition didn't worsen significantly. Toa cared for her day and night, and the entire village was considerate, ensuring she didn't lift heavy things. One day, while walking together on a forest path, Toa suddenly spoke to her. "We're already living like husband and wife, but I want to have a ceremony. Let's get married formally according to the village tradition." She was surprised but also deeply moved. "Will you marry me then?" Toa shyly offered a small seashell instead of a ring. The seashell was passed down from his father and was traditionally a symbol of a precious vow on this island. Her heart overflowing, she replied with a bright smile, "Of course. I want to live happily by your side with our child too." Toa placed the seashell in her hand and gently embraced her. Seeing this, people scattered around the village shouted blessings towards the couple. The wedding took place on the beach according to village tradition. The clear blue sea served as the backdrop, and the bride and groom, dressed in flower-adorned lava-lavas, exchanged vows. Instead of candles or a wedding cake, palm leaves and flower paths covered the ground, and a celebratory feast featured tropical fruits and roasted pork prepared by the villagers. Intense drumming, dancing, and singing continued throughout the night, and the once desolate island glowed brightly as if lit by blessings. After that day, Jenny and Toa decorated a traditional fail together, and Jenny truly became part of Toa's family and the Samoan community. Even though her language skills weren't perfect, everyone understood each other through gestures and laughter, and the wise care of the grandmothers was particularly special. In the later stages of pregnancy, she occasionally felt contractions. If she were back home, she would have gone to the hospital for various tests, but here, the grandmother's herbal tea and the care of the village women were a great source of strength. Of course, she knew that such a birth method could be risky in modern times, so she wasn't entirely free from anxiety. Nevertheless, the firm belief of the people around her that she could give birth safely here, and the strange confidence growing within her as she felt the baby's movements daily, helped. Finally, one night, when she was full term, labor pains suddenly began. The villagers sprang into action immediately. They heated water, cleaned the birthing place, and the grandmother took charge, busily preparing with the other women. Toa paced anxiously but stayed by her side, wiping her sweat and holding her hand tightly. Labor was long and painful. Without familiar epidurals or hospital facilities, she trembled all over, just waiting for the baby to come. The grandmother repeatedly instructed, breathe slowly, push gently, while the surrounding women encouraged her with words like, it's okay, you can do it. Then, after several hours, the baby's cry finally echoed through the night sky. Jenny, utterly exhausted, wept with relief. Our baby. Toa, as if witnessing a miracle, took the baby and kept saying, thank you. You worked so hard, tears streaming down his cheeks onto hers. The entire island erupted in a festive mood. Villagers kept fires lit all night, celebrating the baby's birth with dancing and singing. Jenny fell asleep immediately from exhaustion, but during that time, someone gave the baby both a traditional name and an American-style name. Aru, meaning sky. And the English name suggested was Sky. She and Toa gladly accepted the suggestion, and from that day on, the baby became the new hope of Tupuai Island. After the baby was born, Jenny's life changed completely. She woke up to the sound of the baby crying and spent nights feeding and lulling the baby to sleep. But thanks to the help of the village women, childcare was not a solitary task but a communal effort. Everyone helped look after the baby, allowing Jenny moments of rest. Toa worked even more diligently to provide food and water for his wife and child. If necessary, he would travel to outer islands for trade, acquiring exchange goods or medicines. Whenever the baby grew a little and showed a smile, Jenny felt grateful for her decision to stay. Contact with the outside world happened sporadically. Occasionally, during seasons when sailing was possible, small boats from other islands would stop by. Each time, Jenny would send news to her family back in the US or write simple letters. Her parents, she heard, were initially shocked but gradually decided to respect her decision. If you're happy, if you're doing well, then it's okay. Just make sure to come visit with the child someday, they had said. Months and years passed. Jenny fully became integrated into the family and the mother of Tupuai Island. The child grew well with bright, clear eyes, and the villagers seemed to project their own dreams and hopes onto the child. Though a remote island, this place was no longer unfamiliar. There was love here, and a new generation. One clear day, Jenny walked along the beach, reflecting on the past. Herself, taking leave from work and setting off alone on an adventure. The fear she felt when swept away by the storm and stranded on the remote island. The confusing days spent among people of a completely different culture and language. And now, married to Toa, a Samoan native, even raising their child. I truly never imagined my life could change this much, she smiled, standing on the white sand. Just then, Toa approached, holding the baby and smiling brightly. I'm heading to the fields today, want to come along, he asked. She smiled back and replied, of course. Anywhere is fine as long as our family is together. Jenny now thinks that someday, when this child grows up, they might go to the United States or another country. They might understand the path she left behind or find their own way. But what's clear is that this present moment is incredibly precious. Family and love found in a strange land, transcending borders and cultures. Life is always unpredictable, but within that uncertainty, humans discover the most intense happiness. And if her experiences here could be shared, perhaps giving others the courage to undertake an unpredictable adventure at least once in their lives, that alone would hold great meaning. Still, 22 reliable young men lived on Tupuai Island, most of whom had started families by now. People still warmly accepted the American woman once called Jenny as a neighbor. When sailing was possible, she would occasionally travel to other islands, encounter civilization, exchange letters, and obtain necessary medicines. Back on the island, she raised her child with her husband Toa and sometimes taught simple English more formally or shared American children's stories and songs with the village children. The world is truly wide, and you can go anywhere, she'd say. Coming from an outsider, these words were now received as a message from family, no longer a stranger. Life on Tupuai Island continued. There were hard days and unexpected disasters, but the solidarity of family and villagers was always the key to overcoming them. Isolation was no longer despair but another way of protecting themselves, becoming a major pillar supporting each other. Perhaps this story is about a young woman discovering her true life through rough adventure and love. And simultaneously, it's a story about how mixing unfamiliar civilizations can create new families, fostering warm hearts and hope, something that might actually be happening somewhere in the world. Years passed, and Jenny and Toa strengthened the foundation of their family based on mutual trust and love. The remote island of Tupuai still retained its rugged natural beauty, but life grew warmer amidst the winds of change brought about by the villagers and Jenny's family working together. Leaving behind the pain of her youthful journey and shipwreck, Jenny now felt happiness as a more mature mother, watching Aru, Sky, wake up smiling each morning. The two children grew up learning the island's nature and traditional culture firsthand, absorbing folk songs, dances, and snippets of the Samoan language through the wisdom of the village elders. Their laughter and the vitality spreading through the village became sparks of hope not only for their family but for all the island residents. Toa cared for Jenny and the children with even greater responsibility, as a father and an adult. Waking early each morning to tend vegetables in the fields and fish, bringing abundant food to the table for his family and neighbors, his actions set an example for the villagers. The young men of the village looked up to him, learning the precious values of life. The seashell symbol, passed down through generations, now signified not just a promise, but the eternal solidarity of family and community. Meanwhile, Jenny forged deep bonds beyond her own family, connecting with the island itself. At the annual traditional festivals, her warm stories from America and news of the modern world mingled with the villagers' traditions, creating a new cultural fusion. Jenny shared classic American fairy tales and songs with the village children while learning traditional Samoan stories passed down from the elders, practicing the harmony of two cultures. Thanks to this, the island saw the arrival of an outsider not as an intrusion but as an opportunity for different cultures to enrich each other. One breezy spring day, the family had a picnic on a small hill at the island's edge. Under the warm sun, Toa prepared a basket filled with tropical fruits and fresh seafood he had gathered himself, while Jenny packed some American picnic staples like sandwiches alongside local treats to bring smiles to the children's faces. The two children played freely on the wide grassy field, singing little songs along with the sound of waves carried on the breeze from the coast. That afternoon, the family gathered with the entire village on the quiet hill for a grand feast. This feast was not just about food and games, but a time to share respect and love for one another. The mix of traditional clothing and modern accessories seemed to symbolize the harmony of past and present, traditional and contemporary. Jenny wished she could preserve this moment forever, like a photograph. The laughter, tears, and gratitude captured in each mental image reminded her that her life on this land was not mere survival, but true happiness. As time passed and the children grew, beginning to dream their own dreams, Jenny and Toa decided to help them learn the island's traditions while also dreaming of the diverse possibilities beyond the world they knew. Through cooperation with the village community, a small school and library were established, offering programs teaching Samoan and English literacy. This change brought new challenges and opportunities for the villagers as well, and Jenny's family made significant contributions to the community's development. On days when Toa took the children out fishing, the sight of him ending the day singing celebratory songs with Jenny and the villagers deeply ingrained the meaning of the life he had built. The fields and the sea, cultivated for the children's future, were the fruits of Toa's diligence and love, and these fruits enriched the entire village. Gradually, the remote island village began adapting to the waves of modernization. The changes initiated by the example set by Jenny and Toa's family spread to neighboring villages, and people gradually embraced new knowledge and technology through external exchanges. Regular meetings and educational programs were held at the village hall, and stories from each household instilled hope and courage in others. One day, a small development project supported by a national agency arrived on the island. Aimed at improving the residents' quality of life, the project brought several improvements, including roads, communication, and medical facilities. Jenny's family naturally benefited, signifying new and welcome changes for both the family and the community. Modern medical facilities significantly reduced risks during pregnancy and childbirth, creating an environment where young children could grow up healthy. Newly introduced portable computers and tablets greatly helped children with their studies, and even the village elders could access diverse news from the outside world. Jenny felt a deep sense of fulfillment, realizing the dreams and hopes she had wanted to pass on to her children were coming true, watching each family member grow. Toa continued to work the fields diligently and bring back catches from the sea, silently fulfilling his role as the family provider. Jenny spent her time tending to her own cooking and garden, ensuring the health and happiness of the whole family. Amidst all the changes, the most prominent element was the love within the family. Based on deep trust and understanding, Jenny and Toa respected each other's opinions and planned their future together. The children learned responsibility and community spirit naturally by watching their parents' example. The villagers, too, witnessing families strive together for happiness, felt their own lives becoming richer. Though time flowed on indifferently, the path Jenny's family had walked remained a story of shining hope amidst any hardship. One late afternoon, in the yard where the whole family gathered, Jenny held hands with her children and danced a traditional dance. Toa stood nearby, smiling, watching the scene where his family and all the villagers blended into one. They deeply felt they were a true family, an inseparable community, giving each other complete trust. Jenny recalled herself, once isolated alone on the remote island, realizing that those trials had ultimately created the warm family she had now. Her life, starting from a seemingly accidental choice, had transformed into a beautiful story woven with love, devotion, and the strength of community. The sight of the children growing up and dreaming of their futures was not just individual achievement but a promise of a bright tomorrow that the village and family would build together. The village gradually maintained its unique traditions and identity even amidst increasing interaction with the outside world. The changes brought about by Jenny's family resonated deeply throughout the community, offering inspiration beyond just one family's happiness. Around the evening dinner table, where multiple generations gathered, warm conversations flowed, encouraging each other's lives and sharing dreams for the future. Meanwhile, the children learned to respect the world's diversity through lessons at school and the old stories told by village elders. From a young age, they grew up learning simultaneously about their roots and the new world they should dream of. Jenny and Toa lived with the resolve to fully pass on the new culture created together by family and neighbors on this small island to the next generation. In a landscape bathed in the evening sunset, the family gathered, held hands, and shared their hopes for the future. They realized that through their journey together, they had gained the resilient strength to live through any adversity. And that strength became the driving force leading the villagers, the family, and the small society as a whole towards a bright tomorrow. Finally, Jenny looked up at the night sky and whispered softly, "All the moments we shared together made us who we are today, and we will continue to brighten the world with this love and faith." Her voice held not the pain and trials of the past, but gratitude and joy for the present moment and bright anticipation for the future. Toa placed a hand on Jenny's shoulder and replied, "Our small family achieved a great miracle. This island and all of us are now one family." At his words, warm smiles spread across the faces of the family and villagers, filling the space with infinite trust and love for one another. And so, centered around Jenny Miller and Toa, this small family would continue to protect each other steadfastly, writing a legend of love unlikely to be found anywhere else in the world. Their story, like a light that never dims over time, would remain forever in the history of this island and in the hearts of its people. Thus, Jenny and Toa's family overcame many difficulties, painting a new future amidst deep love and trust for each other and the warm solidarity of the community. Whenever past hardships threatened to hold them back, they instead cultivated even stronger conviction and love for their family, becoming a precious legacy to be passed down to the next generation. The love that began on this small island continues to spread warmth like sunshine throughout the village even now. In the future, their footsteps, woven into the villagers' stories, will surely offer courage and hope to all who are navigating difficult times. In this way, Jenny, Toa, and the family born from their love moved towards tomorrow under the future's sunlight, holding each other's hands even more firmly, with unwavering faith and warm hearts. Their story, spreading from the small island village out into the world, will remain a happy legend, offering eternal inspiration to many. Thank you for watching today.